I am Camden Walker, joined by Professor Jeffrey Halverson tonight. We are live on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and X. We have all the details on this upcoming winter storm that is beginning this evening, approximately 9 to 11 p.m. You can see our accumulation map above, and you can find the storm timeline here below in greater detail at cwg.live. Tiger, thanks for joining. Beth Ann's and Giannis and Katie Peterson. Appreciate seeing all of you on four social media channels. And I will quickly review what we have for you on cwg.live tonight. We're talking about the storm impact in addition to the storm accumulation maps. And the overall headline I want to hit home with you is that this is a moderate to major winter storm. While we will get into the details of how much snow and ice to expect, you can generally expect large impacts Monday, if not Tuesday as well. Heather, appreciate you tuning in. We will get the expert here in just 1 second and projections for airport and air travel. I will throw that Kate to Jeff as well while we look at the details he has prepared for us. So, Jeff, what are you thinking about air travel over the next couple of days, in addition to schools and the federal government, let's say?
Well, the school systems are already calling it off
Right.
one by one, and I think that's just going to avalanche through the evening. Air travel is going to be a wreck, just because of visibility issues. They always slow down the inbounds and the outbounds when there's visibility issues and moderate to heavy snow. Also, just trying to keep those runways clear and free of ice. They may have to shut down things now and then just to get things cleaned off. But this is one of the busiest air corridors in the eastern half of the United States, and the Monday morning rush. Right, this is when everyone gets on their 5-6 a.m. flight. So I would expect serious problems, including probably lots of delays and quite a few cancellations.
And I did look up on Metro. They expect a few problems starting around 4 inches, and I believe over 8 inches, almost guaranteed problems from what I researched. All right,
Yeah.
Jeff, I want to show your first map here, the blend of models, if you want to walk us through it.
Yeah, sure. So, there's um, a real desire for people. They always want to know how much. Tell us how much snow. How much snow we're going to get. That's the number one question on everyone's mind. And so we want to take you a little bit behind the scenes of this process of how we come up with these kind of maps. What we are doing, myself, Camden, and all the other forecasters on Capital Weather Gang, as well as the Weather Service, as well as TV broadcasters, we all basically looking at the same suite of products, and we're looking at the products that are coming out of the NOAA and the National Weather Service. And this map here really represents a synthesis of the state of the art models. We have easily half a dozen models, probably more like 8 or 9. Each model is built a little differently mathematically. Each model uses different types of data and presents the output in slightly different ways, makes different assumptions, and so forth. This map here, with all the gaudy magenta and blue, is the synthesis of all the models. And this is, you just take their input and you basically averaging across all those models across space here. And this is the latest version. This is called the National Blend of Models, the NBM. And I'm not saying this is gospel, but it is a starting point. And folks at Capital Weather Gang look at these types of syntheses. We look at individual models, and then we come up with our snow map, which you see at the top of the screen. And we're always updating our model prediction, snow depth throughout the day. We put a lot of our local knowledge into this, but the issue is we know the strengths and weaknesses of the models, and that is just something that takes many, many years of experience working with these tools. So the NBM is one thing, but then what you see coming out from Capital Weather Gang represents an awful lot of human thinking that has gone into refining the product.
And let's look at the ice levels that the same, I believe, National Blend of Models is forecasting during this
Yeah,
winter storm.
want to point out that with this snow map, what you see is basically the bullseye predicted right across the DMV, right across the heart of the DMV. Some models have taken that heavy snow further north, some have taken it further south. Uh, Now, the other thing we worry about with these winter storms is because you have very mild air coming up from the southeast, and you have this extremely cold Arctic air that is filtered in from the north. And we're kind of in this battle zone, this clash right across DMV, where you've got the warm air riding up over the top of the Arctic air. And what that can do, in addition to creating heavy snow, you go a little further south, you get into a situation where you get the formation of sleet and freezing rain. So we call that accumulating ice. The ice is never nice. No one ever roots
Right.
on or cheers on an ice storm because of all the hazards and perils. Now, what you see here is the national blend of models depiction of where the heaviest ice accumulations are expected. And the take home point for those of us in around DC is this is not going to be much of a concern for us. The icing is expected central, southern Virginia, parts of West Virginia. And there could be pretty significant ice accumulations, ice accretions on the order of a quarter inch, which includes sleet and freezing rain. And of course, the danger there is always you don't want that stuff accreting to power lines and tree limbs. So we don't expect power issues up here. Uh, but if you're in Virginia, particularly the southern half of Virginia, that is a real, genuine concern.
And Anna Shea on Instagram asked about power outages. So really, along and north of I-66, pretty unlikely for power outages.
Absolutely.
And then a quick look at the National Weather Service ice map here. Again, same trend. It's more into central Virginia. And even then, not too serious into the forecast area for our local National Weather Service office, even in central Virginia. But going back to the National Blend of Model Ice, you can see the broader picture in southwestern Virginia. That is where a bigger concern lies. Now, here, as you can see, Jeff, the animation of the kind of how the storm is progressing from tonight into tomorrow night with the WPC maps. I love this surface analysis if you want to walk us through it.
Yeah, I'll walk you through it. So I wanted to kind of, emphasize that this storm is very dynamic. It's evolving very rapidly, and right now it's not over us. It's approaching us. It's basically a track that is coming straight out of the Great Plains, crossing right over the Appalachians, and then we'll move off the coast late tomorrow night. And as it comes across the Mid Atlantic, this is where you have the warm, moist air running up and over the Arctic air. The orange colors here depict where it's most likely to have that dreaded mix, sleet, freezing rain, snow. And I say that's generally south of our immediate area, so that's comforting. Where you see the dark blue color right on the northern edge of that orange, that's where the heavy snow band is expected to set up. So a fairly narrow swath of snow. And that's what makes a forecast like this so tricky. If a forecast model was off by just 20, 30 miles in the actual location of the track of the storm, that heavy snow band is going, because it's so narrow, it's going to really mess with,
And
with
not to
the
interrupt you,
forecast.
Jeff, I have Dana Wolp on Facebook asking if we know where the heavier band should form, and I love that you're answering her right now.
Yeah, the heavier band is really expected to be very close, if not over DC, Central Maryland, and Northern Virginia, and then into the Eastern Shore. So, all the cards line up just right. We win the jackpot on this one.
Let's see. Do we dare talk about the next storm really quick with this
I think
map
we
for the upcoming
can.
weekend?
So, we really are in a trifecta here. This we've already had a very interesting high impact weather event Friday afternoon and evening with the arrival of that Arctic front, um, with the snow squalls, which are quite rare for our region. We actually got a snow squall warning for Fairfax, Arlington, which I don't think that's ever happened. We had the arrival of the front with extremely rapidly falling temperatures, strong winds, and a flash freeze of all the liquid on the roads through the evening. So that was the first piece of the drama. The second piece is obviously the big storm we've been talking about tomorrow and tomorrow night. And if that weren't enough, we're looking now at a third storm, which is anticipated now late next Friday into Saturday, the bulk of next Saturday, kind of just like, you know, 6, 7 days out in the future. So that's the trifecta. Now, this storm that you see here that's being depicted is really more of the classic snowmaker for us. This is a coastal storm, which is going to, it's actually gets going over the Gulf of Mexico, tracks up over the Carolinas, and interacts with a dome of very cold air sitting over New England in the mid-Atlantic. And once again, the recipe is there for a band of heavy snow. Way too early to be talking about amounts or track of that heavy snow band, but it is more of the classic system that historically this type of system has delivered our absolute heaviest snowfalls over the years. Not saying this one is going to do that,
Right.
not saying it's going to be historical, but it's one we're immediately going to have to turn to once we get through tomorrow and start worrying about the next one.
Oh,
Um,
exactly.
and
We'll
and
probably still be
so
digging out.
yeah, this will become a nor'easter over New England. So the trifecta, as I'm calling it.
Very good. Here's the National Weather Service snow forecast, generally 8 to 12 in our area. Generally, we agree with this, but you can see from our interpretations above, we include boom and bust, our confidence levels, and generally we're more comfortable with a 6 to 10-inch band across the region, but north and south could have varying amounts where the heavier band of snow is less likely to set up in our region. But Jeff, we wanted to talk about probabilistics, the high
Yes,
end amounts. Uh,
yes,
this only has maybe a 10% chance of occurring, but if the atmosphere is perfect at being a snow producer, look at those totals. 15, 17 inches. Unlikely
yeah.
though. We should
So
hit that home.
heavy double digits, right?
Right.
Now, like Camden said, really a long shot that this will happen, but it could. And the Weather Service and Capital Weather Gang over the past decade have realized it's really important to communicate, do a better job communicating the uncertainties with our forecasts. And so we want to show you the most likely, the worst case scenario, and then the easy, the easy getting
Here's
off the easy scenario, which is also pretty
right.
low probability. You probably want to show that.
These are the low end amounts, but you can almost think of them as guaranteed minimums with only a
Right.
10% chance of having lower than this amount. So, in a worst case scenario for snow lovers, we're still going to expect, with a roughly 90% chance, 5 inches or so in the region, and in the Appalachians there around Cumberland. Looks like 6 inches is pretty much in the bag as a minimum.
Yeah. Now, just keep in mind, though, that the 4 inches that you see in and around DC, that's very close to warning criteria. Warning
Right.
criteria for us is 5 inches. The difference between 4 and 5 could largely be academic in terms
Hmm.
of the impacts, right? The other thing I want to mention, okay, everyone always wants to know how much. And the other critical piece, of course, is the timing of all this, which we can talk about. The third important thing is the character or the quality of the snow. Is
Yes.
this going to be a heavy, wet snow? Is this going to be a super dry, light, fluffy snow? And the best answer we have now, it's going to be neither. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. It looks like this is going to be a textbook, what we call 10 to 1, 12 to 1 ratio snow, which is when you average all these ratios over many storms and many seasons, you come up with 10 to 1. A really heavy, wet snow that just plasters is like 3 to 1 ratio. And super light, dry, and fluffy is like 20 to 25 to 1. But I think the
Right.
bulk of this event, because our temperatures are fairly cold, um, and there's not a whopping amount of moisture coming into this storm like you would see with a coastal storm. Um, 10 to 1, 12 to 1 is very reasonable. And I think that's what's going to happen. The one thing, if you go further south into central southern Virginia, where the temperatures are milder down there, you're going to get you're going to melt some of those flakes, and that's going to give you that heavy, wet, probably 5 to 1 ratio snow. Chances are greater for power outages from a heavy, wet snow down in Virginia. The ice is one thing, that's one problem, But I think a heavy wet snow is another problem that could compound the risk of power outages down there. Also, we get to tomorrow night. We're expected to see a final round. Here's here's the timeline. We're going to get the heaviest snow out of this storm early tomorrow morning into mid to late morning. Then we expect a lull through most of the afternoon as
Right.
the main piece of energy moves off. But then there's a piece of energy lagging behind in the upper atmosphere with lots of cold air coming down in the wake. We're going to get a second burst of snow tomorrow evening. It may give us several inches. Now, that's all part of our total. We say 6 to 10. Well, that other 3 or 4 inches tomorrow night is part of that.
Right.
But it's probably going to be a very high ratio snow on the order of 20 to 1, very light, fluffy.
So if you want to build your snowmen, do it maybe earlier in the day by early to mid-afternoon. But let's
That's
hit
right.
that home. There are maybe two pieces to this snowstorm, this winter storm, and we could have a lull tomorrow afternoon. So I don't want everyone expecting that it's over or that our snow
Right.
totals, as pictured here above in our accumulation map, people like to kind of jump the gun and think something's over when it will not necessarily be over until around midnight tomorrow night, plus or minus later tomorrow night. All right, so our storm timeline is there. You can find that again at cwgnet.live. This is our Sunday Sunset Live Winter Storm Q&A. I'm Camden Walker, joined by Professor Jeffrey Halverson. The storm impact is expected to be major in many locations, as you see here below. And again, these details are available at cwg.live. We are live blogging there tonight as well. And the impact, again, moderate to major for the broader eastern parts of the United States, if not the mid Atlantic as well. And then let's dive under the hood one more time in a second. Let me see. Uh, Carl's wondering why the federal government is waiting to close. Larry Porter, thank you. I'm glad you heard your question answered about the snow ratio. And Deidre, really appreciate you tuning in. Very kind from Facebook. And Kay Bursall on Instagram is talking about leaving earlier for Dulles if tonight. I would recommend getting to the airport earlier than later for impacts to potentially have a gradual kind of dominoes effect, maybe in early morning hours this morning. Excuse me, of Monday morning. But let's dive under the hood again with Professor Jeffrey Halverson looking at the national blend of models. That's one piece of how we got this accumulation map, as you see above on the top here.
Yep. So the national blend of models, the NBM. I tell you, you folks see all kinds of accumulation maps. A lot of you probably subscribe to little companies that will give you access to these products. You can look at what each model predicts in terms of accumulations. It's a minefield. You have to be really careful what you're looking at, and you have to know what you're looking at because, for instance, a lot of the products that are produced, and we think of companies like Weatherbell and a whole bunch of them really um, make a very common assumption. They use a 10 to 1 ratio, and that is not a one size fits all for every single storm. Even the same storm, different parts of the storm can have different ratios going on at the same time, depending where the warmest air is, where the coldest air is. And the ratio can change over time in a storm. 10 to 1 is just a very crude starting point. And so I believe the national blend of models is trying to factor those ratios, taking those ratios into play. And that's part of the calculation in this case. What the one thing that the national blend of models doesn't do is a lot of these models also don't do. They don't account for sleet that might be mixing in
Hmm.
and cutting down on the snow totals. For whatever reason, that just is not taken into consideration. Also, warm surfaces where snow may stick, but it disappears quickly, doesn't really add up to become accumulating snow, is not taken into effect a lot of times, nor is compression of snow. If you're talking about getting a
Right.
foot or two of snow over the course of the storm, you're probably losing 4, 5, 6 inches of that depth just from compression effects. And that is not taken into consideration by these forecast models. That's why you need to tune to a source like Capital Weather Gang, where we do all this thinking for you. And we look at all those little devil in the details kinds of things and try to factor those into our own snow map.
Let's look at the ice really quick because you were talking about
Yeah.
how we need to consider snow totals being cut down more in central and southern Virginia, perhaps because of
Hmm.
this ice potential we're seeing. And is it sleet and freezing rain, a combination?
Sleet, sleet and freezing rain goes into this map. One of the things we don't have a good handle on is just exactly how far north this invasion of warm air is going to make it. Um, this national average of all the computer forecasts suggests it might get up to I 64. And but we don't really we can't say for sure. It's not going to work its way further north. It may very well. It may not. I would say the greatest risk of seeing some sleet cutting in, uh, probably late tomorrow morning, early tomorrow afternoon, would be across the southern counties of Northern Virginia over into the Eastern Shore. I think if you're up in north central Maryland, you're not going to see this. DC, probably less likely than that there will be some sleet mixing in, but we want to leave that door open uh,
Yes.
in the event that you could lose several inches of snow um, if when that moisture gets converted to sleet instead.
Very, very good. Any last questions and comments, David? And we've got Caper Salt. Thank you very much. Clock Quantum for tuning in. Jack on YouTube. Uh, we don't have any warm surfaces around DC. That's true. So we won't lose too much of the
Right.
accumulation potential around DC. Jeff is agreeing with you. That's great. And then we'll keep you posted at cwg.news/live this week since we've reached the end of our 20-minute allotment here. But the next storm is pictured below, which will, of course, keep you posted on. Not at all a high confidence or guaranteed item for next weekend, but we will keep you posted, and Jeff will as well. And a quick look at the snow total predictions here from the National Weather Service below. Ours is above. We're in general agreement, but please notice how we indicate confidence levels and potential boom and bust scenarios, since this is going to be a very dynamic storm and we have to see exactly where, roughly around the Beltway, the heaviest snow band may set up. It's not guaranteed to know exactly where that might set up, but we're generally thinking in that 6 to 10 zone that we indicate that's where the heavier snow band will end up being. All
And
right, Jeff. Yep,
that
please.
just want to say that heavier snow band is a bit of a wild card because it could push some locations over double digits. There is the remote possibility of seeing totals higher than the foot, not across the whole forecast area,
Right.
but we won't know this until tomorrow, the day of. We just, our models cannot nail down in
Right.
advance where the heaviest snow band will be.
Very good point. All right, storm impact here listed below, and I want to tell everyone that's at cwg.news/live, along with our storm timeline. And we're also covering school closures, federal government's delays and closures. Impacts will probably last into Tuesday, but we will, of course, be with you live tonight and perhaps into tomorrow, seeing how much we get and how far into the week these impacts from this major storm do kind of last into the middle part of the week, perhaps. Thank you very much, Jeff, and thanks to everyone for tuning in to our special Sunday Sunset Live Winter Storm Q&A. I'm Camden Walker signing off. Any final words, Jeff?
Uh, just hunker down, be patient, about 24 hours for the worst of it, start to finish. And Tuesday, we'll be digging out.
Very good. All right, everyone, take care. Stay safe in the storm. Shovel very mindfully and slowly, and take good care. All right, everyone.